Hey everybody, welcome to Love and Relo. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I am delighted, honored, blessed, fortunate to be with these wonderful women here. I've got my super producer, Janet Turner, over here. Hey Janet, how's it going?
Hey Ben, happy to be here. Another day, a little stressful start, but
Hey, we're making it
without too
happen.
stress.
We're making it
Exactly.
happen, you know? I mean, without struggle, there is no growth. Okay. And so we are live and growing right now. Okay. And then
Learning.
we've got Lena Rekdal down there from Stockholm. What's up, Lena? How you doing?
Oh, I'm good. I'm with Janet. I'm also growing.
We are all growing. This is fantastic. I'm so excited. No, we had a little technical difficulties, but that's cool, you know. But here we are, you know. So like without further ado, let's just kind of hop into it. Janet, first you want to tee us up and talk a little bit about, you know, this week and what we're doing. This is kind of your
Sure. Well, I just had this little brainstorm to have a focus around women in trucking in the beginning, and then we sort of tweaked it a little, women in trucking and women in relocation and basically women in the workforce. So Sweden, which Lena will speak on, is a country that has some very good initiatives to support women in the workplace. So we felt like that would be a good fit for this week. And so welcome, Lena.
Yeah,
Thank you.
And Lena, you posted something. Is that you, Janet? Janet's at the rec hall and the Poconos. People are wiling out over there. No, but Lena, you posted something on LinkedIn that I was just blown away by. And it was Sweden was named the #1 country for women. And I was like, that's interesting. And it led to this conversation where we started kind of peeling back a little bit. And Lena, why don't you tell us a little bit about kind of what you discovered in that search?
Well, Sweden was ranked #1 as for women in the workplace, the #1 country, and closely followed, of course, by Denmark, Holland, Norway, Canada, and Finland. So kind of the usual suspects when it comes to these rankings. And Sweden was also ranked #1 by the EU Institute for Equality last year. So we have a feminist government. It's on the agenda. It's also on the agenda, I think, for the WHO to work on equality. It's the 5th goal for them. And I'm not surprised. The Nordic countries have great setups for women and just like the policies that have been driving this for many, many years has made it a good place for women to work and live and to combine a family.
Do you feel that, like, I mean, is that felt in the culture? Because I know we've talked to women, we've talked to people, minorities, you know, a lot of them US based, but all over the world really. And, you know, people describe a feeling of not being at home when they're at work, or not being comfortable, or not being able to bring their full self to work. Is the opposite true when you live in a country like Sweden that's ranked #1 for women in the workplace?
Well, I think that I think we may forget how lucky and fortunate we are, and what an amazing situation we're in, really. We have fantastic childcare. We have 18 months parental leave, and that can be divided in as much as, you know, in any kind of division between the father and the mother. But typically, I mean, the percentage is that 70% is taken out by the mom, but 30% by the father, which is really, you know, unprecedented in the rest of the world.
Okay, I want to stay there just for a moment, and I think these are all interesting, and they all probably deserve a little bit of time. But since you're talking about men, I feel like I'm particularly interested for a moment here, because I have 2 children, and I did not. I mean, I did a little paternity, maybe a couple of weeks, maybe. But you're saying 18 months, and on average, I mean, it sounds like it's not mandated the split, but it sounds like on average, 70% is taken by the woman, but 30% is taken by the man, which is 3 times 1.8 is about 4.6, 5.2 months. So, I mean, that's a lot of time.
That's a lot.
At least
Yeah.
over here it is in the U.S.
Yeah.
Janet, what do you
Yeah.
think?
In
Well,
most countries.
it's definitely a lot of time. But what I will say is, as most people know that follow our show, I recently became a grandmother. My son works for Apple, and Apple, he had 1 month as a dad paternity leave. And then the second month, which he's in now, he only had to go in 4-hour days, but get paid for 8 while he adjusted to be back to work. So I could see a little bit of a shift happening here, but 5.5 months is would be unbelievable. But he was very happy to have the month and then another month of just cut hours.
In Sweden, he could have 15 months if he wants,
That's
because
amazing.
3 months must be taken by one or the other parent, but the rest can be split however you want. So if somebody can't, for whatever a variety of reasons, take out the 3 months, then there's 15 months for that couple to utilize.
You know, I'm with you, Jen. I'm like, wow, that sounds like a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah.
Your son gets a month and then he works half time and gets paid full time. But I mean, to Lena's point, I mean, 15 months potentially. And is it common in Sweden that both partners work?
Yes,
Okay.
96%. I mean, before children, I would say everybody. Few people would choose to have children unless they had a job, because that's how you get a salary while you're home taking care of the child.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because I was going to say, I mean, if one of the partners used 15 months and the other got 3, and then they didn't work, but I mean, it sounds like everybody's working in Sweden, which is a little different than the U.S. Although it seems like, and I don't have any numbers on this, and maybe our great folks watching this can tell us how many people in the U.S. Where both families where both partners work. I'd love to see a stat if somebody could do a quick Google on that and throw it in the comments there. Also, while we're talking to folks in the comments, I know we kind of breezed through this because we kind of got a late start there, but shout out to everybody that's in the comments. We got people coming in on LinkedIn, on Facebook. This is awesome. Hit that like button, throw a little heart out to Lena and to Janet today. Let us know where you're at. Give yourself a little shout out. Stand up, be heard here. Check in with us. Love to see your questions and comments as well. We've got Olivia Bakrami. Hello, beautiful people. Special shout out to Lena, a true inspiration, leader, and female entrepreneur I aspire to be like.
Aww.
Oh, thank you.
So nice.
Oh, I'll tell you all the things not to do too.
How does that feel, Lena, when people hold you up as a female entrepreneur to aspire to be like?
Oh, that's surprising, I suppose. You never think of yourself that way, but I suppose after 25 years, I've learned enough to have something to share with other people. So that's very nice of Olivia. She's great.
Yeah,
Great
Olivia
entrepreneur.
is great. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Olivia's and what she's doing in the industry too, and I think it's just wonderful. Molly Feldman, greetings from Jacksonville. What's up, Molly? You want to give your new company a shout out also, Molly? That'd be cool. Feel free. Good to see you. Tim Quirk, hello all from Western New York. Let's see what he says. My friend Alexander from Sweden agreed that it is definitely one of the tops, if not number one. Good to know, Tim. That's awesome. Janet Turner, I love the party going on behind you. What are they throwing, a kegger there at the rec hall? What's going on?
Flies. I have flies swarming around.
This is fantastic. We've got Fiona here. Hello from Paris. Look at this. Fiona, everyone should move to Sweden to have their kids. Is that a thing? Can people do that? I mean,
if you have a job, you can. And it's actually one of those things that expats really, really appreciate about Sweden. But of course, you have to have a job first, because your maternity or paternity leave allowance is actually dependent on your previous salary, and you've had to sort of earn it. It's not long. I think it's 6 or 9 months to be employed before, and then you can get paid parental leave. There's also a minimum, but it's very basic. It's a very basic income, so it's not much. But up until like a certain threshold of your salary, you will actually get 80 or 90% of your salary, depending on what other insurances are in place. Some companies really encourage families And I think that Sweden is a family-friendly place. And
Yeah.
a lot of companies actually will top up the salary to 100%. That's obviously only possible for really big companies, but it does happen. And it's been one of the ways of getting their employer brand out there.
You know, I go ahead, Janet, please.
Well, I was going to say, what if you're one of these type of people that are having Irish twins, getting pregnant every year and a half? I mean, have 7 children, like I'm from, one of 7 kids. Curious how that works. Is there a limit?
No, there isn't a limit, actually. And for parents that have twins, they get the double.
Wow.
Double time. But people with twins usually want to go to daycare pretty quickly because it's going on vacation to go to work after that.
Well, here Irish twins is like 9 months apart, having kids 9 months apart.
I know.
I know. Correct to say that. I don't even know.
You can have Irish twins here too, but it's unusual.
Yeah.
But then then it's compounded parental leave.
Oh, that's okay. Interesting.
And also, if you adopt children, there's parental leave. So there's no difference if there's 1, 2, or 3, or how you have children. It's of no consequence. You still get the time to care for young children and babies.
And it sounds like, it doesn't sound like they have trouble covering the position for the person that's taking off. I would think that could create a problem in some countries or some companies.
It does. I would say it is for colleagues, of course. If you're having a department with several people on maternity or paternity leave at the same time, that is difficult. And there's a lot of interim because you're granted your place. So when you've been home for a while on parental leave, then your job is secured. It should be there for you when you want to come back. So that means for the employer, they have to plan. And the beauty of having children is that at least 6 months or so that it's likely to happen. So you have time to plan for it. Mm-hmm. So then you should either the colleagues pick up whatever the slack, or there's an interim person brought in while somebody is on parental leave.
I have to maybe ask the question here because it seems like something's got to give a little bit here, right? Somebody's gone for a year and change. And then they come back and their position is held for them. I like all this. It sounds great, but it would seem like it would create starts and stops in careers. And I guess as I'm saying this, I guess the same thing happens conversely, right? Where if you're not granting those positions, it creates even more starts and stops. But those interim people, and it seems like something kind of has to give at some point. How do you afford to do? I guess let me pick a question. How does a company afford to offer those types of benefits? Is it a financial burden on the company?
It is partly a financial burden on the company, but the majority of the burden is on the state, the government. So the government pays out. It's not entirely. It's not a null zero-sum game for the companies, but it's not a big burden financially. The burden is definitely the planning to cover up, to have operations uninterrupted, and also finding the right person who can get right in there. But it's also an opportunity for other colleagues that might be able to be promoted because somebody is gone for 9, 12, 15 months, 18 months, whatever, or 15, I guess is maximum. And then to be practice managers or practice at a new role. So it can also open up some upwards movement within the company for somebody else.
Yeah, that's an excellent point because I guess I'm thinking about if I'm the interim person, I'm performing for a year, and then somebody comes back from maternity, paternity, and then I'm no longer in that role. But I could look at it the other way and say I would have never gotten that opportunity to begin with had that person not taken a sabbatical, right, or paternity leave, maternity leave. I'd love to hear your questions as you're watching this. We're getting some fantastic questions right now. Lisa, Fiona, Janaina, Mariella, Sandra, they're all coming in. All these wonderful women. I'd love to hear your questions for Lena, for Janet, for myself. We're going to talk about how Sweden became the number one country for women in the workforce, and what companies can learn from Sweden, and how we can transform our companies to become a great place for women to work as well. So we got some great questions coming in here as well. Let's see here. We're just going to kind of go here, and Marielle is checking in. Hello from Northern Virginia. Always love hearing about successful female leadership. Hey, Mariella, good to see you. Lisa Thomas, hello from Ann Arbor, right down the road. Let's see here. Fiona has a question. What about childcare? Do companies have an on-site kindergarten and nurseries? I always thought this was a great benefit to have. Go ahead, Lena.
It is a great benefit to have, and some companies do have that. Not that many. And I have to say, since I've welcomed so many expats over the years, one of the real points of friction is when we say, well, there's daycare, and there's little trust in daycare around the world for some reason. And what I can say, the daycare in Sweden is phenomenal. And having welcomed tens of thousands of people who have had children in daycare, there has never been a complaint, nor among my friends. And we had the most amazing experience with daycare. So it's really high quality. It's not just, a place where you store children while you're working. It's a place for development and fun, and they get good food, and it's really, really amazing.
Well, if the daycare in Sweden is anything like IKEA, I mean, I got to tell you, I'm a fan. I'm a big fan. I can get my clip-hand chairs. I can toss my kids over there. I get my Swedish meatballs. I come back, have a date night, I get a chair, and it's all free. I'm a big fan. You were saying though before I went crazy. Go ahead.
No. But I would say that that's one of the reasons not many companies set up daycare, because it's so well run and it's all over the place, and it's pretty much, for most people, it's within walking distance if you live in a somewhat metropolitan or urban area.
Is it? Did you say this right? Is it state run?
It's both. They're
Okay.
both private and run by the municipalities. So we have both.
That is so fascinating, Janet, too. I mean, again, coming at this from an American perspective, which people are probably like, yeah, Ben, I mean, of course, it's probably somewhere, different somewhere else. But, we have public schools here that start in kindergarten at 5 years old. Sometimes there's some public preschools as well. Going through this now as my kids just started preschool. But there are no public daycares. And so, and that has been an argument for the gender pay gap here in the United States, is that a lot of cases women are taking, that 4 years off of work and then kind of having to do a restart and a step back in their career, and then have to get momentum again and get their career jump started. But it seems to me, in a country where 96% of the partners both work in the family, it's made possible because potentially this state-run and private, amazing, robust infrastructure of daycare. Do you think that, does that enable Sweden to reach that 96%? And does it enable women to have such a high quality of life in the workplace, in your opinion?
Absolutely. I would say, if you have children and no one to take care of them, and I know my business partner in the US, her daycare in New York City was $17,000, and that's actually 20 years ago. So, of course, there's little incentive. If you have a couple of kids, then your daycare is going to cost more than your salary, probably.
Yeah, definitely. People are making that judgment call all the time here in the States, right? It's cheaper to get an au pair sometimes when you have two kids than it is to do daycare. So that's fantastic. That's a great point. We got some other great questions here as well. And I I want to also tie this back into what companies can do here, in other countries, right? As we're looking at Sweden as the example, and you as an entrepreneur, someone who runs a company, have a unique perspective and could share with us what other countries can do to incorporate some of these. I'm going to bring up some. Lena's relocating right now. Object lesson in relocation. I'm going to pull up some other comments here. Let's see here. Fiona has another question here. How do Swedish companies view working mothers and careers?
Good question. I was thinking that even yourself as a woman, entrepreneur, I would think, you have two employees that are women and all of a sudden they're both pregnant at the same time. Is there sort of like this, feeling? And do you find that women and men share that, or are men less sensitive as bosses? I'm just curious.
It's a great question.
I don't know if that makes a difference, because having to manage a workforce and a team doesn't really matter who you are. You're going to face the same difficulties if you have several people, key people out at the same time, and that can of course happen. But I think that there are so many worse things that can happen, that people move abroad, or they quit, or other things, and with much shorter notice. A pregnancy can always typically be planned long in advance, so you can get other people to cover up, and you start the training internally, etc. So I don't see that it's a huge problem. It's never an emergency. It's always a planned action.
That's so interesting. And do we just run shorter staffed over here, Janet, where it feels like if somebody's gone, if a critical member of the team's gone for kind of an undetermined amount of 8 months to 15 months, it would almost seem like catastrophic to operations. It almost seems like you have a culture of you. I guess you plan for it. You just know it's coming. It's part of the environment. You're just used to it, because here in the U.S. it feels like it would be a bigger hurdle to face. It seems very easy to.
I think we practice all the time, because in Sweden and many countries around Europe, you have 4, 5, 6 weeks vacation, so you're always kind of short-staffed. And especially in the summer, which for global mobility obviously is the crucial time of year to be in the office. That's when most people in a cold country want to have time off, because it's the only time you can see the sun and go swimming.
Preach.
So I think we're just constantly practicing on covering up for one another. And of course, it's difficult when somebody's out of the office and everybody feels it. Small companies are much more vulnerable to this than bigger companies, of course. But I think we're in constant practice. So I would say pregnancies it's also a happy event. So I think it's the least difficult thing to cover up. And you also know it's going to be for a while. So you take the effort to plan and set things up so it will work nicely.
Does Sweden have companies that offer temporary help? Like we have that here?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And there's a lot of interim people in all sorts of positions, finance, HR, and some types of jobs are very much outsourced anyway, like all the financial accounting, finance, HR to a great degree. It's actually not that hard to find excellent HR people for interim positions.
We've got some people checking in here. We've got some great people commenting here. Yvonne, thank you so much, Yvonne, for the stat. 63% of couples work in the United States, both partners. I'm assuming Yvonne means. Thank you, Yvonne, from the World Bank, former guest here on the show. This is fantastic. We've got people coming in here left and right. It's so funny. We do this 1 hour earlier, and all of a sudden we get so so many Europeans, and this is fantastic.
I was going to just Sorry, say one more thing. I mean, you mentioned busy season. I mean, there are companies here in America that will tell you you cannot take vacation this time of year. Does that ever happen in Sweden where companies actually put down, the law that you cannot take vacation?
Well, it's supposed to be a discussion between employee and employer. And having Sweden is very much a country where everybody runs in the same direction at the same time. So the schools are closed mid-June until late August. So you have about 10 weeks there, which is difficult for parents because it's far longer than their vacation. And since we are in need of getting some sun and getting outside in the warmer months, which is pretty short here, there is a law that you're allowed to have 3 to 4 weeks in a row, consecutive weeks in the summer.
Yeah.
It's a law that you can do it in the summer.
Yes.
That's interesting.
Yes. And
that is so interesting.
All this is old, and everything as far as vacations and holidays go, it's all connected to the farmers and what was needed on the farms for the old days. So in a few weeks, there's a vacation, and that's called the apple vacation because that's when you have to harvest the apples, and it's still there. So it's really funny. If you know anything about agriculture and farming, the whole yearly schedule makes a lot of sense.
Well, in the U.S. school schedule is the same way too. I mean, kids would have to harvest and stuff. So that's so interesting. We have people checking in left and right here. I love this. Sophia, hey Sophia, hello from Mexico. What a great topic, guys. Happy to see it being discussed. Sophia has a question as well. She says, "That's so great, Lena. You hit the nail on the head. Childcare isn't just about leaving the child somewhere, but the development side of things is so important." Now, I have a question about this. Oh, gosh, we have so many good questions. I want to get to all of them.
And I know Sophia is homeschooling right now because they are in Mexico. So.
Yeah, is that due to COVID or another
Yes.
choice? Yeah. Wow. And Sophia, we got to have you on the show too. Can't wait. I'm really excited about it. So we're working on having Sophia with us as well. Now, the whole idea here with this is how do we take these policies that are advantageous from maybe a public policy or a cultural way in Sweden, and how do we then ideate, and how do we then incorporate them into our company? So let's take this one idea that we're discussing here. Well, we've actually discussed two, right? We've discussed one which pertains primarily to, man, I'm not even saying this right. The maternity leave. Let's take maternity leave to begin with, right? The 18 months of maternity leave, of which the woman must take at least 3 of those, and then they can be split with the man, 70% typically by the woman on average. How do we then incorporate that into our company? Let's say I want to do that. What would I have to do, in your opinion, as a leader of a company yourself, to accommodate that? What would need to happen?
Well, I can totally understand that for a company in a country where this is not funded by the state, you need to sort of have a fund for these kinds of events. And I would say that there's a lot you can do that doesn't cost much money. I just want to say my phone is short on battery, so eventually I may have to call you guys. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Yeah, and if we lose Lena, we'll just make up the rest of the show. We'll just
make it up.
We'll just make it up. We'll take your questions and we'll just pretend we know, and we'll just answer from a Swedish perspective. Yeah.
You should. But anyway, I think there's a lot of things you can do, easy things, just to allow people to work from home. And I think that COVID has really put the light on the fact that we can all work from home. We're very productive, and there are other ways of meeting and communicating, and it works. I think one thing that we are worrying about now 6 months later is that people don't really walk around much, and you can maybe gain a little bit of weight. You're too close to a refrigerator, etc., etc. Well, me too. But there are what we have done is that we have countered that by having Motivational Mondays. We talk about food. We have step challenges. We have sessions every Monday to set us off to a good start, and also daily calls, just 15 minutes check-in to make sure people, to just get a feeling that people are feeling okay, because, you know, it's hard to sit alone at home. But the good thing is that if you're a parent, you can avoid a commute, you can have flexible work schedule when you can pick up and just allow time for family time. And it's okay to work at night. And a lot of Swedish parents are running from work super stressed around 3:30, 4, depending on how far they are from their daycares or schools. And then they work a little bit in the evening. And so we're more flexible, but we do put in the effort that is needed. We can still handle our jobs. The years with young children is, of course, very cumbersome for parents because you have a lot of things to juggle. But there's a great deal of understanding from our society. And also, at some point, we had a single mom on our team, and we helped her with, you know, getting food delivered to her house because that would make life easier for her. Or sometimes our clients, obviously, when they come for a day, they need help that day, not 3 days later when a kid's sniffles are gone. So then we got extra help. So somebody who came home and took care of our sick children so she could go out with clients. So there's a lot of things you can do. There's always a solution. And I think if you're really looking to solve a problem, it's just not that hard. This is not very difficult things to solve.
Well, I love your stance on that, and I'm actually we have a thought exercise here. Angela says, I agree with you, Ben. UK is very similar to the US. Private daycare and nurseries are very expensive here as well. To which Mariella says, and I think this is splendid. I've just been thinking about this. In the US, the prevailing thought is that providing free daycare and paid paternity leave is giving, quote, free handouts, and the taxpayer should not bear the high cost of these benefits. How does the Swedish government sustain these costs? And are tax rates extremely high? I would love your thought on the tax rate, and I'd love to maybe even offer a comment to Mariella as far as how this might actually work. What's up with the tax rates in Sweden?
Very high. Very, very high. We used to have the highest tax rate in the world, and then they reduced a special tax for high income earners by 5%. So now we're only in the second place. Belgium and I think it's Croatia have higher tax rates than Sweden. So this is not free, but this enables women to get out in the workforce. So the benefits for childcare exceed the tax that is paid by the parents that are actually working, which is also the reason why this is provided. It's because the government wants the tax money. So I would say that the reason the tax is high is not necessarily because of the childcare. We could have other things that we're wasting money on.
You know, I think that's a great example there, Lena, that you offer. And you mentioned that your associate in New York was paying $17,000 a year in childcare. In my area, it's probably closer to $12,000, right? Mm-hmm. But it's still pretty significant. But into Yvonne's number, 63% of couples, both people work in the United States, but you quoted me a number of 96%. Which means a full 33 points, 33% more, a third more people, both couples work in Sweden. Now, just looking at the economics of that, if my wife who stays at home today, if she were to go get a job for $50,000 or more dollars, she's going to be paying $17,000 in taxes out of that. So anything she earns above that $50K is a net to the good for the government, assuming no economies of scale, assuming that there's no profit in that in a public situation. So to your point, I mean, I think you're spot on. I mean, the number one way to increase GDP is by having a bit larger employee base in your country that can produce things and goods and services and work and have income. And so I think you're opening up a huge piece of the workforce if they chose to work, by allowing, free or public daycare. I mean, I mean, that's kind of what you were saying, right, Lena?
Yeah. And that's the reasoning. And then the reason why this started in the 70s. And that's when they wanted to get women out in the workforce. And then they realized, well, in order to get the women out in the workforce, we have to do something for the children, or it won't happen. And it's actually excellent.
Yeah, this is interesting. Sandra, hey Sandra, goodness, amazing info about the work leave policies. What is the average tax rate if much of this leave is paid by the government and the cost of living? Yeah. So do you know what the effective tax on average is in Sweden?
Well, it's a progressive tax. The highest tax is 71%, but that's for high income earners. But 53% is another, 60% is another cutoff. 53 is another one, and then around 35.
Wow.
So no one really gets below 35.
Okay. Yeah. And then from a cost of living standpoint, how does that compare to the rest of the world?
It's high cost of living.
High cost of living, high tax rate, but great quality of life, it sounds like. I mean, how's the quality of life? I mean, we talk about for women in the workplace, it's very high, number one, but how is the general quality of life, would you say, compared?
I would say we have a high quality of life, but we don't have the luxury and we don't have the poverty. So it's sort of in the middle. It's very much the same for everyone. And obviously with high tax rates, you have less freedom of choice, because you just don't have the disposable income to choose. And I would say that's the big difference with the US. And if you read that book, Lean In, that somebody recently mentioned by Sheryl Sandberg, when that struck me as like, wow, for normal women, this is a difficult country to maintain a career. But for high income earners, there are amazing opportunities. And so you have sort of it's more difficult for the low end, but it's fantastic for the top career women that can have a really lovely life in a way a Swedish woman can't, because you have to go home and you have to take care of everything. And you also have unpaid work in the home is 27 hours a week for a woman and 21 hours a week for a man in a couple, which makes it actually 48 hours of unpaid work at home. So it's considerable, don't you think? For cleaning, doing laundry, everything.
I got it, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't understand the concept of unpaid work at home.
Meaning
just
housework
running a household,
and cooking,
basically. Yeah.
But I think that there's joy in that too. It depends on your personality, and I think that there could be joy in staying home with your children as a quality of life too, than feeling like you have to go to work because of the high cost of living. I mean, I don't know. I just
totally agree with that. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the things that are rarely discussed, is the fact that living here, it's so expensive that both people in a couple have to work. Having somebody at home is not an option for a majority of the people here.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you. So is it even culturally acceptable for someone to stay home with the children?
Yes, but very few would choose to do it. It would maybe mean that you didn't have a chance to get a job because you lack skills or something. But I would say that it's unusual, but it's also for most people unaffordable.
Interesting.
So it's not a choice. It's something you have to do. And that goes with the high tax rates and the amazing setup we have for women and men to have children and work. But it comes with a price, and it's a lack of freedom and lack of choice.
Interesting. Ben Sukia says, great discussion, everyone. The topic of gender equality is so important and relevant. Should the global mobility industry be doing more to raise awareness and promote best practices to other countries that need to improve in this area and other social issues, given we are well positioned to connect with so many different cultures in our industry? I'm insinuating a question mark there. Should we be doing more, Lena?
I don't know, but it's definitely, I looked at a talent management seminar today, and it's one of the things that is very much promoted as employer and country branding is the family friendliness in Sweden.
Interesting. Okay. We got time maybe for one more question or comment here. Let's see here. I feel like I have like jet lag, Janet. I feel like it's almost over here, but I'm not ready for it. Yeah, let me see here. I think there's one more question or comment here from Holly. Hello, in my experience, Holly's in the UK. Hello, in my experience, the parent, mainly women, miss out on promotions, pay rises as a result of missing the performance review cycles, and therefore creating a disparity. Is this something that you feel like Swedish female professionals maybe don't suffer from as much? Is that
not as much, I don't think. But it's regulated by law. But even if you're on maternity leave, and a little bit like Fiona was mentioning last week, was that women upskill while they're on maternity leave. They keep in touch with their job. They come in from time to time. They're not completely lost for whatever X number of months. So I would say that it's not that much. And they often get promoted. And in fact, they can get promoted because when they come back, women with children are amazing at priorities, amazing at spending their time wisely. And they're very, very efficient because they know that I have to work very fast when I have the time because something always comes up with kids, right? Okay. So a lot of people will say it's their number one go-to group of people they want to hire. So when you have less time, you need to do more strategic work. So it can actually really be an advantage.
Awesome. Henry says, didn't the government recently decide to extend paternity leave time in Sweden? The idea would be to create more equality between men and women.
You're totally right, Henry. It went from 1 to 3 months. And that's the 3 months that has to be taken by one parent. And, without saying it, that, of course, is the father, because in the beginning, it's the mother who has to take care of the baby.
Oh, so both parents have to take at least 3 months.
Yes.
Oh, interesting. I missed that. Okay, interesting. Ken Nicolene checking in from Canada. I appreciate this conversation so much, Lena, and I know it's really late over there in Sweden. I'd like to give you the opportunity to kind of leave us with some final thoughts around creating successful cultures and policies in our workplaces.
Well, I think it's really having a holistic view of people and yourself. And understand that work is one part of your life, but there's so much more. And somebody who has a balanced life, has vacation, is able to take care of their families, spend time outside the office, is far more creative, much smarter, and is a better employee and a happier person to be around. So I think we really have to look at everything that makes a person happy in life. And happy employees is a happy company, and I think we can all benefit from that. So I don't see that it's not any friction in that. Quite the opposite.
Awesome, Lena, that's fantastic. Janet, you did another great guest here. Janet, you lined up. So
thank you, Lena. Sorry we were a little
Janet.
delayed, folks, but I think we got some good content in there.
Awesome.
And I think Lena hit the nail on the head with the whole COVID thing and remote working now. I think that has changed a lot of employers' thoughts on being able to accomplish tasks while having your children around.
Yeah, I feel sorry for homeschoolers, I have to say that.
Yeah, same.
But that's hard. But as long as there's a school, I think it's a very good situation for parents. I think it can work very nicely.
Awesome. Wonderful, Lena. Thanks for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you, as always. And we'll talk soon.
All right. Sounds good,
Bye,
Lena.
everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Hey, real quick, everyone. Wanted to give you a quick little update. Tune in to Patricia Tavares from Unilever's Brazil talk show, which is coming up 4:30 Eastern in the U.S., 5:30 if you're in Brazil. I saw Janaina over there. I'm going to be making a little cameo on there in about 26 minutes. So, tune in over there and wish me luck. I'm very honored to have the opportunity to talk to Patricia and actually be on the other side of the table. Janet, another one.
And then tomorrow you get to interview with Elise, the chairman of University Moving. So we have the opportunity to see Ben interviewing his boss. So I'm looking forward to that.
I'm nervous, Janet.
I know. It'll be okay. As you always tell me, it'll be okay.
Well, you're gonna have to calm me down. You're gonna have to calm Elise down, and we're gonna try to calm down for everybody. This is great, Janet. Thanks again. Women in Trucking and Relocation. Great week.
Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care, everybody.